Perhaps this is a good place to also mention a little bit of a fun little controversy that evolved over Twitter. So I posted a reading list quickly before heading off to a New Year's party of books that I hope to read in 2023. And these were based on books that I asked people to vote on, and these are the ones, many of the ones they selected. And they happen to be many of the books I've read many times throughout my life and really enjoyed. And they were like old friends that I love visiting and revisiting. And every time I read them, I get something new, and they're just read different throughout life. You know, the way in my teens when I read The Stranger by Camus is very different than it was in my 20s and different than my 30s. I would say my favorite book now by Camus is probably The Plague, and all of that has evolved. With Dostoevsky, I read The Idiot several times. I read Brothers Karamazov, both in English and Russian. Notes from Underground. I mean, I love Dostoevsky, and a lot of these books are just, yes, they're classics, but they're also deeply profound, and they move me on a intellectual level, but also just as a human being. They're like travel companions. They're like old friends, old dead friends. So yeah, so I wanted to celebrate my love for books, and it was very strange to me that, and if I'm just being honest for a second, it was kind of painful that some prominent figures that I respect were kind of cruel about the list, and they responded, they mocked it, and all that kind of stuff, and basically taking the worst possible interpretation. And I have to be honest and say it wasn't fun, because it was just a silly kid, me, kind of in a joyful New Year's mood, sharing with the world books I love. And I think what was happening, and this seems to be happening a bit more, is there's a bunch of people that are just almost waiting or hoping that I fail, or maybe that I'm some kind of bad human being, and they're trying to discover things about me that reveal that I'm a bad human being, and maybe somehow this reading list reveals that. I don't know. I don't know. So one criticism was that everybody read these books in school and they're basic. I think my response to that criticism is no. First of all, most people have not read them in school. Maybe they read Cliff Notes, and they're not basic. They're deeply profound, some of the greatest words ever written. But also, I don't think I've ever gotten a lot from books I was forced to read in school when I had to read them for like an assignment. Some of these books I think I read in school, but most of them not. But it's only when I read them outside of school on my own volition that I really gained a lot from it. And especially throughout my life, regular times, as a teenager, as a 20, in my 20s and in my 30s. So no, these books are profound and deserve returning to. And like I said, there are old friends that give me a lot of meaning every time I return to revisit the ideas, and they give me a new perspective on life. Another criticism was very kind of nitpicky, and the list was put together really quickly. And the goal, I like setting tough goals. The goal is to read a book a week. And, you know, on one week I had Little Prince, followed by Brothers Karamazov, and people criticized that how can you possibly read Brothers Karamazov in 1 week? Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll fail miserably. But I love trying. But that wasn't actually the goal. I should have said I intend to finish reading it by the end of that week. So you start earlier, because Little Prince takes an hour or two to read, and then Brothers Karamazov, I can have the 2 weeks. It should take about 30, 40, 50 hours to read it. That said, friends, I've read it already in English and in Russian. I'm interviewing the world famous, I would say, amazing translators of Brothers Karamazov, of Dostoevsky, of Tolstoy, Richard Pevear, and Larissa Volkonsky. probably across multiple days. So this book means a lot to me. I'm not somebody just kind of rolling in. What are the cool kids reading these days? These books have been lifelong companions to me. And the fact that people just want to stomp on that, and a large number of people did, people I respect. Yeah, I'll be lying if I said it wasn't, it didn't suck a bit. Anyway, the love for reading persists. I have to say, after that, I was very hesitant to even make this particular video on Orwell on 1984. And I'm not sure I want to be public with my reading after this. And I know a lot of people will say, no, there's like, we're here with you. They're very supportive, and I love you. I mean, I meet so many incredible people, but the reality just does suck to be vulnerable and share something with the world and receive that kind of that kind of mockery at scale. So I will definitely, I will not be affected or broken by any of that kind of stuff for something that's actually meaningful, like the conversations of some of the very difficult conversations I'm going to do. But a silly side hobby thing of reading that I do throughout my life, for that to be a source of mockery, I'm just going to do that privately. So I'm a little torn on that, and I'll try to figure out a way. Also, I should say that list, like a lot of things, is kind of aspirational, because if I take a job at a tech company, or if I start a tech company, or if I have to travel across, I have to travel for extremely difficult conversations and really have to prepare for them, all that kind of stuff, I think that's going to affect my ability to both read and enjoy reading, which I think is a prerequisite for this kind of reading. But in general, what I do is I read about 1 hour a day of Kindle, so on the sort of in my eyes physical device. And depending on the workout I do and the chores I have, it's going to be about 2 hours of audiobooks. So most of the things I do during chores is audiobooks. And when I run, and I usually run about 10 to 15 miles, so you're talking about, like, I often run over 2 hours. It's like a slow pace. Like when the days are not insane, it gives me a chance to think. It gives me a chance to listen to audiobooks. So I love that process. It's an escape for the world, a chance for me to collect my thoughts. And yeah, it's, again, a source of happiness and joy. And I wanted to share that. And yeah, I think you can get quite a lot of reading done through that process. Especially if it's a book you've read before. It is very challenging to do this kind of takeaway video, or to concretize your thoughts down on paper, especially when you have to present them in this kind of way. I'm not sure I'm going to do that much, because it's an extra bit of effort, but it's also a chance to share that joy with the world. So to find cool people that also enjoy it. So it's a trade-off. Anyway, it's just a temporary thing, but it did suck for a short amount of time, for a few hours, for a couple of days. But in general, I'll persist with my love of reading, but I might not talk about it publicly as much. But again, let me sort of emphasize that this kind of response and mockery will not affect anything of importance that I do. Like I try to read comments. I try to see criticism. I really value, especially high effort criticism. I try to grow and constantly try to improve. But that's for things that I take very seriously, like the podcast conversations that I do. But for silly things like book lists, Spotify music playlists, the food I like to eat, I don't know what else. Anything, any fun, like side thing. It's not that important. If it's something that others don't enjoy, then whatever. I'll enjoy them privately with my friends locally here, or the people I meet. So anyway, I love reading. I love reading classics. I love returning to old friends, and in book form, and making new ones. There's a bunch of science fiction that I embarrassingly have not read and would love to, because those worlds are so meaningful to so many of the people I'm friends with, that I can't wait to visit those worlds and sort of make new friends in the form of books. So definitely the love for books, the love for reading persists. And if you share in that love, that's beautiful. So thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for watching this silly little video. And I hope to see you next time. Love you all.